After I finished college, I was looking for a temporary job where I could earn some extra money. My mother's friend offered me the opportunity to take care of her elegant house, which had 3 cute, quiet, and cuddly cats. The house was filled with antiques and old books, but there was always something strange in the air, something I couldn't quite place. For the first week, everything was quiet, except the cats would occasionally stare into empty corners as if they were watching something I couldn't see. I would laugh at myself and convince myself that cats always do that. But on the 10th day, things started to get weird. One night, I was reading a book in the living room while the 3 cats were lying quietly around me. Suddenly, the cats raised their heads at the same time and began to stare at the ceiling of the room, their ears pulled back. The room felt cold, as if the air had become heavy. I slowly stood up and looked up, but there was nothing. But when I turned off the lights, I saw a black shadow moving across the ceiling, as if it was strolling, before disappearing into the wall. I couldn't sleep that night. I heard light footsteps on the wooden floor and occasionally a scratching sound as if something was trying to reach the ceiling. The next day, I found the office door wide open, although I was sure I had locked it the night before. Old books were scattered on the floor, as if they had been thrown off the shelves. The cats seemed more nervous and no longer came near the office area. On the 14th night, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard a strange, loud meowing from the office. The sound was different, like a deep, sad meowing. When I entered the room, I found one of the cats staring into the hanging mirror, which showed a strange reflection, something like a person standing behind me, even though I was alone. I left the house that night, leaving everything behind. I told my mother's friend that I could no longer take care of the house, and I apologized profusely. I couldn't explain what I saw, but I knew those cats were seeing something I couldn't understand, something dangerous lurking in the shadows. My name is Jenna. At the time of this unsettling incident, I was 18 and just weeks away from graduating high school. It was the end of May 2018, and a friend's parents had asked me to house sit their property for a weekend while they attended a family wedding out of state. The house was in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. They promised to pay well, and I was looking forward to a few days of having a place to myself before the chaos of college preparations set in. The house was elegant and modern, with a massive backyard, a beautiful pool, and large glass sliding doors overlooking the property. My best friends, Ava and Ethan, decided to join me, excited for a mini adventure and a chance to celebrate our upcoming graduation with some independence. Ava brought board games and snacks, while Ethan arrived with a Bluetooth speaker and his usual sarcastic humor to keep us entertained. We spent Friday evening lounging by the pool, laughing and reminiscing about our school years. As the sky grew dark, we set up a movie on the enormous flat-screen TV in the living room, dimming the lights to create a mini home theater experience. The movie was a cheesy horror film, fitting for the atmosphere. We were half serious, half mocking its absurdity, when we noticed something odd. Ava was the first to hear the faint knock. It sounded like it was coming from the large glass doors that led to the pool area. We paused the movie, and all 3 of us listened, holding our breath. A second knock followed, louder this time, but when Ethan drew back the curtains, there was no one there, just the stillness of the backyard illuminated by the soft glow of the pool lights. "It's probably just some animal," Ethan said with a nervous laugh, though I could see his hands were shaking slightly. We brushed it off, but unease settled over us like a cold fog. We double-checked the doors and windows, making sure everything was locked. Around midnight, just as we began to relax again, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number, and I let it ring out. Moments later, the house phone, the one my friend's parents had warned me might not even work, started ringing too. Ava's eyes widened, and Ethan muttered, "This isn't funny anymore." I picked up the receiver with trembling hands. A man's voice crackled through the line. "Is this Jenna?" the voice asked. It was slow, deliberate, and had a quality that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Yes?" I replied cautiously, my voice barely a whisper. "There's something in the backyard," the man said, and the line went dead. I dropped the phone, my heart racing. Ava and Ethan looked at me, their faces pale. We scrambled to lock ourselves in one of the back bedrooms, dragging a heavy dresser in front of the door. The three of us sat on the bed, whispering frantically, trying to devise a plan. The minutes ticked by slowly, and the house seemed to grow quieter, more oppressive. We tried to calm ourselves, convincing each other that it must be some prank. "Maybe the neighbors," Ethan suggested, but we all knew something was wrong. A loud bang suddenly shattered the silence. It came from somewhere outside the bedroom. We all froze, listening to heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing through the house. Whoever it was, they were in no rush. Ethan grabbed a heavy lamp from the bedside table, holding it like a makeshift weapon. Ava and I were huddled together, too terrified to move. The footsteps grew louder, stopping right outside the bedroom door. The handle jiggled slightly as if someone was testing it. We could hear slow, measured breathing on the other side. "Go away," Ava screamed, her voice cracking. The breathing paused for a moment, and then a low chuckle drifted through the door. The footsteps retreated, but we stayed put, barely daring to breathe. After what felt like an eternity, the house was silent again. We didn't dare leave the room until we saw the first hints of dawn filtering through the window blinds. The living room was in disarray when we finally worked up the courage to come out. Cushions were strewn about, a few picture frames had been knocked over, and the glass doors to the pool area were wide open. Muddy footprints were leading in and out of the house, and one of the kitchen knives lay ominously on the counter. Shaken and exhausted, we called the police. They arrived quickly and took our statements, but there wasn't much they could do. The house had no cameras, and the footprints led to the street, where the trail went cold. We spent the next few days jumping at every shadow and sudden noise, terrified that whoever had entered that house might return. To this day, I still have no idea who called or what they wanted. It's a mystery that haunts me, an experience that made me realize that even in the most beautiful, peaceful places, darkness can lurk just out of sight. When I was a sophomore in college, I was offered to babysit at a college friend's house. The family who owned the house was well known for their wealth. They were about to go on a long trip, and they asked me to stay at their home and take care of their large German shepherd named Zico for 3 weeks. I was in love with living in a beautiful house for a decent amount of money, but I had no idea this would be the most terrifying experience of my life. When I arrived at the house, it seemed eerily quiet and comfortable. It was huge, filled with luxurious furniture and antiques. At first, everything went smoothly. Zico was a calm and obedient dog. I would take him for walks, feed him, and play with him in the large backyard. But on the 5th night, the house began showing me another side I wasn't prepared for. I was sitting in the living room, watching a movie, while Zico lay beside me. Suddenly, Zico stood up and started growling towards the corridor leading to the basement, which was always dark and closed. His eyes stared into the darkness in a way that made me feel cold. I tried to calm him down, but his growling did not stop. It only got louder. I decided to find out what was bothering him. I turned on the flashlight and headed toward the basement door. As I slowly opened it, a cold wind hit my face. I walked down the stairs, and each step made a sharp creak that filled the place. I reached the bottom. The darkness was thick, and the air was suffocating. Suddenly, I heard light footsteps behind me. I quickly turned around, but there was no one there. I ran up the stairs and closed the door tightly behind me while Zico was still barking. I couldn't sleep that night, and the sounds came from downstairs all the time. Light knocks, vague whispers, and sometimes the echo of muffled laughter. I started to get nervous as the days passed, and I felt like the house was watching me. On the 8th night, Zico was in the backyard. While I was checking the windows and doors to make sure they were locked, I suddenly heard Zico howling hysterically, as if he was screaming at something unseen. I ran into the yard to find him standing before a vast tree, staring intensely into its high branches. As I approached to see what he was staring at, I felt a chill run through me, as there was nothing there. But Zico did not calm down. After midnight that night, I woke up to the sounds of faint laughter coming from downstairs. This time, I did not dare to go down and investigate. I remained sitting on the bed holding my phone, ready to call the police any moment. Meanwhile, Zico began to growl, but the growl was low and mysterious this time. Then, unbelievably, I saw him slowly turn and look at me, his eyes glowing with a strange red light. I could not continue living in that house after that night. I packed up my things and left the following day, telling the family I had taken ill. I never returned, and I swore I would never take care of animals in any other house. I still felt that somehow Zico saw something I couldn't, something that lurked in that basement, something evil.